Every single year, one small animal becomes the center of the world's attention. Cameras flash, crowds cheer, headlines explode, and one simple question takes over the internet. What did the groundhog say? Because on Groundhog Day, millions of people wait for one moment. One tiny movement, one symbolic prediction that somehow feels bigger than it should. And that's exactly why this tradition refuses to die. Because it isn't really about a rodent, it's about hope, fear, routine, and our obsession with knowing what comes next. And this year, when the groundhog was lifted from its burrow in the freezing early morning air, the tension felt real. People leaned in, reporters went quiet, and the handler raised the scroll. Because according to tradition, if the groundhog sees its shadow, winter stays longer, and if it doesn't, spring comes early. And in that moment, the groundhog made its call. A moment that instantly spread across social media, news outlets, and group chats. The groundhog saw its shadow. Which means, according to the legend, winter isn't done with us yet. And just like that, half the world groaned, half laughed, and the other half started arguing about how a furry animal somehow still controls headlines in 2026. But here's the wild part. This tradition isn't random. It goes back over 100 years. Rooted in old European folklore brought to America by German settlers, who believed animals could sense seasonal shifts before humans ever could. And over time, that belief turned into ceremony. Costumes, music, crowds, and one superstar groundhog who now has better media coverage than most celebrities. And every year, no matter how advanced technology becomes, we still show up for this simple ritual, because deep down, humans crave patterns, we crave signs, we crave something that tells us the chaos of weather, time, and life itself might still follow some kind of order. And that's why when the groundhog speaks, it feels like more than a joke. It feels like a shared moment where millions of people pause together and wait for the same answer. And even though science tells us weather prediction is insanely complex, even though meteorologists use satellites, models, and supercomputers, the groundhog still gets the spotlight because this isn't about accuracy. It's about tradition, connection, and comfort. And ironically, the groundhog's track record isn't perfect, but that almost makes it better because it reminds us that uncertainty is part of being human. And we keep coming back anyway. And when the announcement dropped that winter is sticking around, it instantly sparked reactions. Memes about never-ending cold, jokes about people mentally preparing for more dark mornings, and others celebrating because they love snow, hoodies, and cozy nights. And that split reaction is exactly what makes Groundhog Day fascinating, because it mirrors how people feel about change itself. Some want it fast, some want it slow, and everyone wants to know what's coming. And this year's prediction lands in a world already feeling heavy, where people are exhausted, overstimulated, and craving something simple to look forward to. Which is why even a silly tradition feels meaningful, because it gives us a moment to stop scrolling, stop stressing, and focus on something harmless, shared, and oddly comforting. And the groundhog doesn't know it, but it plays a role in emotional storytelling. Because when people hear winter isn't over, they don't just hear weather news. They think about routines, school mornings, work commutes, heating bills, seasonal moods, and everything tied to the cold. And when they hear spring is early, they imagine sunlight, fresh air, new beginnings, and that feeling that something better is on the way. So when we ask what did the groundhog say, what we're really asking is how much longer do we have to wait for change? And the answer this year suggests patience, more waiting, more endurance. And in a strange way, that message fits perfectly with the time we're living, because nothing feels instant anymore. Progress feels slow, goals feel far away, and people are learning that good things usually take longer than we want. And Groundhog Day becomes a tiny symbolic reminder of that truth. And what makes it even more interesting is how seriously people treat it for one day. Even those who joke about it still check the result, still share it, still talk about it, and that collective behavior shows how powerful shared rituals are. Because humans don't just run on logic, we run on stories. And this is one of the oldest, simplest stories we still tell together. And behind the scenes, the groundhog is treated like royalty, cared for year-round, protected, and celebrated as a living mascot of tradition. Which adds another layer to why this event survives in the modern age, because it blends nostalgia with spectacle, simplicity with symbolism, and humor with hope. And when you zoom out, it's kind of beautiful that in a world obsessed with speed, algorithms, and non-stop breaking news, we still stop to listen to a groundhog. And maybe that's the real message, not winter or spring, but the idea that some traditions are worth keeping, not because they're practical, but because they remind us who we are, creatures who look for meaning even in the smallest moments. And this year, the groundhog said winter isn't over yet. But history also tells us something important. Winter always ends eventually. No matter what a groundhog predicts, the seasons move forward, change arrives, and spring always finds a way back. And maybe that's why people keep watching year after year. Because even when the prediction isn't what we want, the bigger story stays the same. Nothing lasts forever. Not the cold, not the dark, not the hard times. And in a strange, simple, fuzzy way. That's what the groundhog really says every single year.